Hi, I'm going to do a new series of videos here, Advanced Steel for Beginners, starting off with the model. This is the first video. I'll cover the model and I'll cover railings, stairs, cameras, output drawings, stuff like that. So this is the first video. So to start off with, we're just going to open our template. So I have a 2001 template. If you want to open this, if you want to edit this, you can add cameras and stuff like I have here. You can add queries, things like that. You can do that and then resave it, but just make sure you resave it as the DWT file. So I already have the units set in this, but if you want to check them, just type in units and you can see I have architectural precision 1/32 and inches. And that's good. Okay, and then you want to go up to your project settings. I don't have this filled out yet, but what you would do is, fill this out. Sorry, I'll just put ADM here for client project number. I don't have a project number. The project is going to be Advanced Steel Beginners, so on. You can do, and you do here, your preferences are here. So I have it set to United States Imperial, weight units here, length units here, so on. Everything down here. I won't get bogged down in too much stuff. User attributes, these can be very useful. These can be added to your drawing, whether it be date or whatever you want to put in here. So I use it actually for engineer and architect. So one other thing you want to do is go into your management tools and you want to go to your options, and you can see my current author is ADM, which is where I want it, but I have other authors in here and you can create new profiles for each company. So what I can do if I want is I can copy this profile and rename it to, sorry, I keep hitting the caps lock. And the author is AS Beginner also. So, okay, and you can see I've changed that. And now everything I edit inside my profile. So usually people will have their own company one, and then if you have a company that has different settings, then you'll create a new profile for them, but most of your settings will probably be the same. So that's good. So close that, click on this button here, which will update your settings, update your defaults, and then we're good to start. So you can see I have a compass in here already. So we're going to start just with a really basic structure, very basic, and we'll go through some connections and just how I build my model. So to start with, we'll put in some grid lines. I use the single axis. You can use a build a grid, but that grid then is all connected together. I don't know if they've changed it in the last couple of years, but I like to be able to extend individual grids if I have to on a drawing. So what I'll do is I'll create a grid line and I'll just make this 30 feet long, and I do want to put edging on it, and I'll do numbers, and then I'll copy that, and I can do array 4, and I'll do 10 feet. So there's 4. So then we go back in here and change these numbers. It takes slightly longer. Obviously if you have more grids it takes longer than doing a large grid, but when you do a large grid you have to lay it out anyway and get all your dimensions right, so there's not that much of a difference. So I'll do the same here. I'm going to snap from here to the end of this one, and we're going to put these in as capital numbers, and we'll do edging. We can just leave it as A for now. Now what you want to do is just double check your grid before you copy it, and I'll do a distance. So came up here to measure tool, and we can see the distance is 30 feet. If you check down here you can see the X and the Y direction is 0, 0, so it's good. And then I want to copy this, and you can do a different way of copying it. Is you can copy, pick the start point, and you can pick array again, the number of items. We'll do 4 again, and then we'll do F for fit. You can see there's a fit down there, and then I can just pick the end of that grid line. Now, a tip I have is I used to extend these grid lines, but it's a bad idea because when you update your drawing, it'll add a dimension to the end of the grid line. So if I have this one out here 4 feet, I'll get dimensions from here to here, but then it'll also give me a dimension from here to here, which I don't need or want. So it's just helpful to know that. For a long time I was extending those grids, and it was not helping me at all, because I had to keep deleting dimension lines on the drawings. So now we've renamed. Alright, so we're good to go. So now we're going to draw a couple of columns. Now what we can do also is, grids are only visible if we can see them in the drawing. So you know what, it'll make more sense for me to visit this in a minute. So what I'll do is I want to save this. I should have saved this earlier. So I want to save this as AS beginners and save, and then we're going to draw some columns. Now you can use this column command, and I'll put a column in here, and you can see the positioning is off, so we can set the position into the center. You can see in the naming it comes in as a column automatically because I use the column command. And if we check the height of the column, properties, the height is 16 feet. So if I want that to be 10 feet, then I either have to drag it down or I have to cut the beam, which is not that big a deal. There, I just dragged it down. If I undo that and I draw a line from this grid line up 10 feet, I can cut that by using not the merge beam, obviously, the cut beam, this one, split beam, and it'll split it. It'll know by its system line which way to split it, and then you can just delete that. That's a way to do it. It's not the way I like to do it. What I like to do is I use beams for all my columns. So if I come back in here, I'm just going to go to columns. I'm going to click on that, so now my active layer is columns. So when I create a beam, it's going to come in on the column layer. I'll just go up, make sure it snaps into the Z direction, and then type in 10 feet. And there you go, there's your 10-foot column. Now, if you right click here, you can see that the material and the coating will come in the same. This controls what comes in the next time the command is activated. And you can see up here the position and the mirroring, naming, nothing here apart from the model role is, now this model role is only selected because I selected it previously today. Usually this is not selected. You need to select this and maybe your lot phase, and then every time. So I closed that before I actually know I had it in as column, so that's good. So now the next time I create a column, it'll come in as a column. If you don't tick this box, it'll just come in blank as none. So keep that ticked. So now we can also draw beams by drawing lines. So maybe you want to do it by drawing your construction lines first. Now I would draw these on a construction layer, but I'm going to delete them after this, so they'll get automatically erased if you want. So do beam from line, select those two lines, right click. Do you want to delete selected objects? Yes, so the lines have been deleted. And now I want to change these. Let's change these to rectangular hollow sections. square, and then we're going to go to 8 by 8 by 3/8 should be enough. And there you go. So now we have 4 columns. The name is column, so that's good. So now we're going to go back here and change this to standard. Standard is the layer you want to be on almost all the time. And then when you create a beam, it'll come in on its beam layer, and grids will come in on the grid layer, and so on and so forth. So you can see the grids are on the grid layer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create some beams. So really proper practice for inserting beams is to insert beams from south to north and from west to east. Because your numbering on your NC files, this was the case a couple of years ago. I don't know if they've fixed this, they should have, but it's good practice to draw your beams this way because the marking on the NC file will be on the start of the beam. So as you will set this down to the top, as you see, start of my beam is going to be on east. That's where I want my numbers. So that's kind of how that works, supposedly. So if I go to naming here, you can see this was named a column. So I'll change this to beam on the first one, and then the next beam I create, which is going to be from south to north, is going to be a beam automatically. So that's good. Alright, so what we can do is we can just copy these then if you want. You can use, we're on the grid line, so we can use the grid line to copy that if you want. And you can use the grid line to copy that if you want. So that's good. So now if we click on this, we can see that this beam is, look at the properties, it tells you everything about the beam. It's coating surface, the beam is 20 feet long. Alright, so what I want to do is I want to space these beams out so they don't need to be exactly divided up. So what I'll do is I'll just copy 7 feet and 13 feet. And that'll do for now. So now I'm going to put in a connection. So what connection do we want to put in? Let's do the bottom of this column first. So let's go to the column and let's go to base plate detail. Let's select the base. Do you want an additional concrete object? No. And now it's added in a plate. So let's have a look at this plate. Let's have a look at the macro, see what we got. So we have a 1-inch base plate. That's too big, so I can make that a 7.75. Now, the plate thickness, the column is shortened by the plate thickness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a value here because I need some grout underneath this. So now I need to add the plate plus the grout. So if I have 1 inch of grout, I need 1.75 inches of space. So as you can see, let's move that up. So let's do plate dimensions. So this is good. It's 3 inches all around. That's fine for a tube column. And the bolts, so it's an 8-inch column, is 3 inches all around, so 8 and 6 is 14, and the anchors parallel 14 is 10 inches. I want that to be 11 inches, so it's 1.5 inches in the column, 1.5 inches. Sorry, 1.5 inches in the column and 1.5 inches. No, there's something wrong with my maths there, sorry. So if I do 10, and anchors parallel is 10, yeah. So that seems too close, right? So maybe my 11 was right, I'm just looking at it wrong. 11, and then you can just double check. So how I double check is I'll go here and check the distance from here to here. And it's 1.5 inches, so that's good. You can be whatever you want it to be. So now what I do is I'll just create grout quickly with a rectangle. So I do rectangle and extrude down 1 inch of grout. I'll pick this And if you pick this one here and I do -30, there you go, you've got some grout. So you can create a grout layer, which is probably good practice. So let's go in here. Let's come down. We'll go to something similar. So concrete slabs, create a new one. Let's call it grout. I should really have this added to my template. I have it in my other template. So let's close that. So we have grout. So what I'll do is click on that and then go to grout here. Now this is just a solid, so it's not an intelligent object, but it'll show up in your drawing. So now you can see we have some grout in there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to copy that connection. So let's pick this. We want these connections to be connected together. So what we'll use is this green one here. These ones here, we'll copy them and keep them separate. And these two green ones, we'll copy them and allow them to be connected together. And do you want it? No. So there it is. And then all I'll do is collect this and then I'll copy this over. And then if you want to check your height is correct, go up here, click on your level symbol, connect here, and you can see we're at the 0 point. So that's good. So that's the ground level. Now, with your first one of these elevation symbols, let's say your project is, let's say your project is 4 feet. The level of this is 4 feet. If it's in a loading dock or something like that, click on this, go to global height. If you change this to 4 feet, you can see that now this is the 4 foot mark. And if you remember, these columns are 10 feet long. So if I go up top and click here, you can see this is now 14 feet high. So it allows for this being the global height of 4 feet. So that's helpful. So always model near your origin and start on that base level of 0, unless there's some reason you can't or you don't want to. So now we're going to work on some of the connections here on the top. You know what, we'll finish up the base first. So what we can do now is we can copy this over here. So if we use the same, we don't want to use this one because this is a different type of column. So we just want to use this one. It'll just copy the connection. And it won't be connected to anything. So now this doesn't look right because it's a different type of column. So this type of connection works for these ones, but not so much here. So because the anchor distance is between the anchors and the plate distance is off the edge of the beam. So what we want to do is we want to change this. So we'll edit this. So advanced joint properties. So generally you don't want to be giving somebody a base plate that's like a weird size. So if I go in here, the base plate dimensions, you can see the plate length is 1'2" by 1'2", which isn't terrible. So I could change this. Here, now you can see here, all projections equal. So you can change the projections. But now this is the size of the plate, which is not what we want. So we want to go back here. We don't want the layout to be projections. We want it to be total. And then we'll go back, and this date is weird. So I'm going to change this to like 14 inches. That should be okay. And 1 foot, I'll change this to 1 foot. But now remember, this is 14 and this is 12. Go to your anchors parallel. 14 and 12. So we want to change this intermediate distance to, so this distance is away from the web. So intermediate distance, we want to change this to, this was 14. So if we change this to 12, it's too much. Sorry, the plate's 12 that way. Sorry. So I want to make that less. So I want to make that 9. It'll be 1.5 inches in. And in the other direction, go to the anchor flange. And here it's 11 inches. I want to tighten these up a little bit. So I want to tighten these up to 9. That might be good. And that'll do for now. You know, it depends what you need for the job. The anchor types you can change here. You can create new anchors, your own anchors. Anchor length is here. Nuts and washers, you can add 2 nuts and washers, nuts and washers underneath. Generally it's restricted because I find there's not enough nuts and washers you can add. So that's probably going to be good for now. So what you can do now is you can go to your library if you want. Properties, library. And then you can save these values. And then edit so you can rename it. Come down here. I'll just name it 1 because I will delete this later. Generally, I delete these every now and again. It's better to just create a new connection. Be sure every time you start the job that it's the way you want it, and then move forward. I don't save jobs and then use connections on other jobs when it only takes a minute to create a connection. So let's say we have these as leveling nuts, so that's fine. So let's copy this one over to this column. Nope. And then we'll change back to 2D wireframe, and we'll do rectangle and extrude. We'll do 1 inches again. Click on this, you'll see this arrow here, minus 30 degrees, and then we'll add this also to the grout layer, and then we'll copy this. So now it's kind of looking at least properly. Alright, so now what we want to do is we want to add connections. So let's start putting some connections up here. Now save your model, just click up here and save. There you go. And what we're going to do is we'll do the shear tab connection. So let's click on platform beams. This has like your platform beams, all your framing. So you want to do a shear plate, and it shows down here main beam first. Right click, and then secondary beam. And what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at this connection first. So this connection looks to be pretty good, right? It's got enough space, seems to be fine. So let's see in the library. This is the one I just created. I did a little test run beforehand. So what we'll do is we'll edit values. We can come in here, we can delete these. So we'll delete this one. And we'll delete this one. And we'll delete this one. So you can delete all these. You know, these are like old ones. Delete. So we'll do OK. So let's click on the default. We'll change this back to the default. Sorry. Right, so you can see from this. Now, you don't need to change back to, sometimes it's hard to see like which side of the beam is this plate on. Instead, just press your shift key and your orbit button on your mouse, and you can see it's on this side. So it saves you switching over and back, because most of the time you should be in wireframe when you're modeling. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back into the connection, so I can either click on part of the connection and right click and change properties, or I can double click on the box. So what I want to do now is I want to check all my parts of this connection. So if I have a look at this, you can see cuts and stiffness, right? This is not correct. You don't not want the two of these. This will come up as a clash on your clash check. I believe it still will. So you don't want these both. It should be one or the other. So I'll do straight cut web. I'm going to make this 0.75. A lot of my clients like this 0.75. You can see the cut back is 0.75. Now we're going to do the top copes. See these copes here? They don't really affect this connection. But I'll show you something now in a second. So what I'll do is I'll just jump straight to bolts. So the bolts 3/8, the plates on the left. Now generally we would want the plate on the other side. Let's say it's easier to connect it if you have to lift the beam up on the outside and push it in. So if I change the side of the beam, you can see that the plate has gone to the other side, but the bolts are still facing the same way. So this can be a problem because the bolts are associated with the steel where the head of the bolt is. So right now the head of the bolt is on the side of the plate, so these bolts will be on the material, will be on the bolt list on the column. But we don't want them on the bolt list with the column, because if, let's say, they just want one column or all the columns first, the bolts will go with the columns and you don't need them, and then they're going to get rusty and they're going to be on the job. So when you switch sides, you also gotta go to your bolts and invert your bolts. So there's the bolts inverted, so now the bolts will be associated with the beam. So if you send the columns to the job first, they won't have the bolts. Then the beam will have on its drawing, the bolt list will include these 3 bolts and the 3 on the other side. So that's important. A lot of people don't know that. That is quite important. Also in here, if you go to plate shape, plate layout, there's a create marking down here. So there's all different things here. There's plate gaps, flange, web. You know, you can change the shape of the plate to go top and bottom when it's going into a beam. Doesn't really affect us in this case. So I won't get too technical because it's just a beginner's video. If you create the marking, you can see a marking has come on here to show which side the beam goes on site. Don't really use this myself. I do think it's nice when people use it, but generally the plate's offsetting the column, and you're going to know what size, you're going to know what side that the beam goes on, because the beam's going to be on the center of the column basically. So it shouldn't be a big deal. So what I'm going to do is, sorry, I was just plugging in my mouse there, charging it up. So I turn off that, because otherwise the ones that are on opposite sides will get different numbers. So you'll have 2 different drawings. The plates will look the same, but they'll be on different drawings. So we'll just go back into this again, and we'll just look at the vertical bolt settings. So if we see here, if we go to plate bolt horizontal settings, so you can see I have it set to 2.5 inches from the face of the column to the bolt center, and then 1.5 inches back to the end of the plate, so it's a 4-inch plate. So I have a 3/4 inch cut back, so that means the edge distance from the hole to the edge is 1.75 inches, which is good. I need it to be 1.5 inches at least, so that's fine. You can see the vertical bolts are set to be 3 inches down from the top of the beam. So if I set that to be 1.5, you can see the plate then will be flush with the top of the beam. So I'll make that 3 inches. That's how I want it. And then I want 1.5 inches to the start of the plate. So if you change that to 1, you can see it shortens, but I want that to be 1.5. I want 1.5 to be the end distance, and I want the intermediate distance to be 3, and I want there to be 3 bolts. So that's the connection I want. So now what I'll do is I'll copy that connection around. So I'll go back in here, go to your tools palette, and I will copy this as a group. So you can see down here, it says select the main beam, right click, and then this beam. Now I like to do it this way, individually, one at a time. The copy group command, this one, you can just select the columns and then right click and then select all the beams and then right click and it'll add them in, but it's not something I like to do. So now let's say we have this. If we want to go in here, if we can't find the original one, obviously it's easy to find here because it's the only one with a joint box. If you want to edit one of these and you're like, where's the joint box? You can just right click or select, right click, and joint box properties, and then the joint box will also be there for the next time. So this one is the one I want to edit, advanced joint properties, and what I want to do is I like to have one on the inside and one on the outside, unless the client requests them both on the one side, or maybe the case determines that they need to be, if there's a wall on the other side or something. So I want to, you can upgrade, let's say we upgrade this to master, right? So this one is now the master. And then we edit this, we're going to do plate bolt, horizontal bolts, and let's change the amount of horizontal bolts to 3. You can see all of these joints change, so that's good. So now let's say this one here, we want to have this plate on the other side. What we need to do is remove this from the group. So we use this command here, which is remove joint from the group. So select that, and then remove joint, or you can do the other way around. You can pick the command and then do that. Now if I try and edit this joint, you can see that it is the master already, so it shouldn't be if it's still in the group. So plate and bolt, let's just see if we change this to 3 again. That's the only one that changes, so we're good. So what I want to do is I want to put that plate on the other side just to show you. So if I go to plate shape, plate layout, go to left hand side, just remember, if it matters to you, turn the bolts the other way. So inverted. So now the bolts are still with the beam. So head of the bolt with the beam, unless there's some case where you don't want that to be the case. So now we're good, right? So here we have two different cases. We have a beam to a column, so we can use this one also. So let's pick this connection and let's copy it with the regular copy. Select the column, select the beam. There you go. So that's good. Happy with that. Copy that. Then you can copy that in a joint group with this green one over here. Click the column, click the beam. So that's good. So now we're going to put clips in here. So we want to go back to our connection vault. We want to go to our platform beams. We want to go to our clip angles. Select the column, select the beam. So always the primary member first. And you can see, let's put these in here. Alright, so let's have a look at this joint. So the clip angles are 4x4 by 3/8, which is what we want. The cut back is 3/4, which is what I want. So now we need to check the holes on the plates. The top cope, bottom cope, we'll have a look at those in a minute. I'll show you something that's interesting. So that's good. The top and the bottom copes don't matter in this case because it's not coped, top and bottom. So it doesn't matter what these values are. The bolt parameters are good. Horizontal bolts, 2.5 inches from the back, 2.5 inches from the back. That's good. And the vertical bolts, yeah, so everything is good. We want it to be 2.5 inches from the back, so 2.5 inches from this corner of the angle to the hole, and same this way. That's those two values. Vertical bolts are good, 3 inches from the top of the beam down to the bolt, 1.5 inches up to the top of the clip, 3 inches between, and 1.5 inches on the bottom. So that's good. But now I'll change the style here so you can see. If I change this, now if you click on this, and if I want to copy this, let's say, oh, I can copy this over here. The problem you're going to have is this is going to have copes on the top and bottom. So if I copy this over, if I use the reg, it's going to be a different situation. So I'll use the regular copy, not the copy as a giant group. You can see it looks okay. It's not great. The bottom seems a little weird. So the problem here being, if I click on this, advanced giant properties, I'll make it a more distinct example so you can see, because the cutback. So let's see, top cope. See, I have to cut back from the secondary end as 3 inches. Let's say we make this 6 inches, and the bottom cope 6 inches. And the K distance, I don't like using this value either. So let's say, now this hasn't changed, but if I copy it over to here, it's cutting this back 6 inches from the end. You just couldn't see it the last time because it was pretty close to the value we needed. So I don't like this. So what we really need to do is, we can either just edit this one, or you can edit this one here to have the same values. So what we can do is, let's just copy this, sorry. We'll copy this again. And we'll edit the values inside here. So right click on that part of the giant and open the giant properties. So I'm going to do top cope. From secondary end, no, I want to do it from main flange, and I want it to be 0.75 inches, so 3/4 of an inch. Now you can see this is all jacked up. This is because the distance in here is not enough. So I don't want the K distance. I want from the, you can pick from the inside of the main. If you pick the inside of the main, the problem with the inside of the main beam is, if I make this 0.75, which is 3/4 of an inch like I usually do, and the radius value is 1/2 inch, which is good. The problem with this is, if this main beam changes over here to something different on this side, then the cut on the beam will be different, and then it will get numbered different. So you should have it relative to the beam itself, is how I like to do it. So if I go back into this joint and I go to my top cope, I've changed that to 3/4, but I'll do inside of secondary. So I just want to cut down 3/4. Now this beam could be very thick, and that might be an issue, so you may have to change it to be relative to the main beam. But generally, if you have a 3/4 inch cut, it's going to be fine. Do the same on the bottom. 0.75, but I also got to change it to from main flange, and then not K distance inside a secondary beam, and then I'll do 0.75, and that's good. And then what you see, that's fine. So then what you want to do is go to properties, sorry, go down here to library. The library's in a different spot here. Save these values, edit, and you want to give it a name. I'll just name it 1. Okay. So now you're good with your platform. So what we can do now to, I don't use the propagate joints. You can pick this, and you should be able to propagate the joints. Thought it was here somewhere. I don't see it. I don't use it anyway. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to copy this over here, and you can see that it's fine because it doesn't use those copes anyway. So if you do this connection properly, you can use it for both situations. Otherwise you do two separate ones. It's fine to do 2 separate ones. So what I'll do is, these 2 joints now look the same, but they're not the same. So I'll delete this one, and I'll create this as master slave, as they used to call it, but I guess they call it parent child now. It's more politically correct. So parent child, and I'll copy it. And as I said, I like to do these individually so I can see them populating and I can see that they're working. And there's your joints. Now The only thing is, obviously, you're not going to leave the top of these empty, so I'm going to go to my connection vault, and I'm going to do plate, and then this is for columns basically, and plate, select on it, it'll automatically put it in layout. I'll make that a 3/8 plate, and it's shortened by the plate thickness, which is good, so it's going to be all flush and stuff. And there's all sorts of projections. You can make it bigger, you can do all sorts of things. And check your weld, 1/4 inch thickness of web. It's probably a little thick, it's probably going to be a 3/16 weld, so change that to 3/16. And then you're good. So now I want to copy that, so let's just click on that and let's copy that across to the top of this column, and there you go. Now you have something that looks like a little structure. That just gives you an idea how to do all these joints and connections. And obviously I want to copy this over, so copy this over to here. Alright, so there's your little structure. I'll continue on with this. I'm going to put a handrail around this. I'll put a stairs coming up onto this. If anyone is interested in following the series, videos are going to be a little long, but I try to explain things maybe a little too much. But what you want to do then is just want to check, if you want to check something like this, your bolt sight, that's a sight bolt, so that's good. Or if you want to come down here, go to this tab, the selection tab, and this one here is remove marking and display objects connected in shop. Click on the column, there you go, it marks up the column. So if you want to select everything, there's other ways to do this a little better, but this is the basic way of doing it, so I can see, oh, these are all connected in the shop. Okay, that's great. Click it again, if you click it again, it'll deselect all those items, and now you can see those plates and those bolts are connected to that beam in the shop. So now you can see that they're going to be connected. There's also up here, if you go to output, there's one here, mark loose parts, and select the assembly. There's no loose parts there. No loose parts. You can also select this. That marks all of the 3 loose parts have been found. Those are the 3 loose parts, which means they're not part of an assembly. These ones are connected to shear plates, and over here this one has got clips on it, and these have all of clips, and these have plates welded on them. So that's it. So they're just some useful tips for you if you want to use them. So let me know if this has been helpful to anybody, or maybe if there's something I should include. Maybe I can redo the video. As I say, it's for beginners, so it's just to kind of show you how to create beams using layers. It's also good practice to use as many layers as you can, create extra layers. Actually, if I can, let's select all these, select similar, and then let's copy these because we'll need these up on the next level. So we also have these, so these will show up on the drawing now on the next level. And what we want to do is go to home and go up here, layer, and then go to your grid layer, which is here, and then create another one, grids 2, so grid second we'll call it. Alright, so there's grids for the second level. Now you don't want to have these grids all over your drawing because they're a real pain when you're trying to work. So what you want to do is put these second level grids on this other layer and then just turn this layer off. Now you can't see them. So do the same up through your building if you want. There's some other stuff over here that you can use, like queries. I mean, the video is running long, but let me just do some queries. Maybe you can create a group, and we can call the group columns. So if I call the group columns, that's fine. Now I can come in here, go back here to your selection, and then select these 4 columns. Right click, you can see it has highlighted these. We want to select the selection to mark them. So now they're all marked. And then go back to your group and then add elements. And now when I deselect this, if I go back to my groups and turn that on, then it'll highlight those columns. Now I've always also highlighted the concrete stays on, so they're not actually highlighted with that. It's just an object, so it's still visible. Turn that off. Another way you can select all the columns is by creating a query. So if I do query, assign a color, and I'll assign a yellow. Objects, steel beams, folded beams, plates, folded plates, anchors, that doesn't really matter. Column properties, you can just pick material, whatever you like. Numbering, naming. So what I'll do is naming, and I'll do model role, and I'll do column. So scroll down, there's quite a lot of selection here. You can pick many of these if you want. And then I'm going to save this query as column. And then do OK. And you can see it has marked the columns. Now, it's just marking the columns because it's not numbered. And well, it's not because it's not numbered, it's because these are the only things that have the model role of column right now. So they're selected, so then I can run this selection again, it'll select everything that's connected to the column. Once you have the numbering done, it can select the other parts with it. So you can do the same for beams, clips. If you run the numbering, you can just use the numbering. So let's just say, for argument's sake, we want to run the numbering. So I never just run the numbering, I always select and then run the numbering. Now you can run the numbering and it'll number everything, which is fine. I'm numbering everything anyway. So there's a couple of different ways. This is the way I use the number for main part. You can change these to whatever you want. Apply. Okay. So you can see we have 3 columns numbers, so we have 2. So let's deselect. We want to turn off the selection, sorry, that's X turns off the selection. So I want to see what's what. So the B1 is those 2 beams, B2 is those 2 beams, C1 is those 2 because they're the same, because they have holes and holes. And this beam is on its own, and this beam is on its own because they're different. And then these columns are different because they have different shear tabs on them. So there's your numbering. So now, if I go into this clip, I click on it, naming, I could see that it is M1001. M1001. So let's go into query and let's run another query and let's save it as, well, let's select it first. So steel beam, because that an angle is a steel beam, and common properties, numbering, single part mark, and the prefix is M1001. Save that as M1001. Okay. OK, and now you can see that it has marked all the clips that has that number. They're highlighted, so now we want to select them all. Sometimes the selection doesn't show up until you go and click on one of them, and there's all your M101. So you can do this with any part, and then you can have them here where they're easily accessed. So if I come over here and I click on this, it'll just show me those plates. Again, these are concrete, not concrete. They're what I use for concrete. They're just solid, so they still show up. So hope that's useful. Hope the video helps. Let me know. I know it's a little bit long, but let me know if it helped. And if there's anything else anyone is curious about, maybe I'll try and do a video if I know what the answer is. Take care, and I'll be back soon with the handrail and the stairs and so on. Alright, take care. Bye.